The lecture hall was not built for comfort, but for reverence. Its ceiling curved like the inside of a great shell, ribbed with metallic veins that pulsed faintly as if the structure itself were alive. Rows of tiered benches descended toward a circular dais in the center, and there the instructor stood, his tall, silver-scaled form cloaked in deep indigo. His name was Vaynar, a figure whispered about across academies as the one who crafted enigmas no machine had ever solved. Every student knew this day would test more than patience or intellect. It would weigh the soul. Elias shifted on the hard seat he had claimed near the middle row. He had been warned about this place, about the disdain certain species held for humans, but his nerves showed only in the way he tapped his thumb against his knee. Around him sat creatures of striking variety, a pair of tall HFY with translucent skin through which their arteries glowed like fireflies, a cerati whose head bristled with sensory spines that quivered at the faintest vibration, a broad-shouldered Zealand whose claws clicked against the bench as though sharpening themselves for conflict. Each radiated superiority in their own manner, and each glanced at Elias with the same unspoken question: how had a human earned a place here? Vaynar lifted his hands, and silence fell with the weight of ritual. From the folds of his robe, he drew a small box, no larger than a human's palm, its surface a lattice of interlocking planes that shifted and folded upon themselves as though the object were breathing. Even before he spoke, tension thickened. "You have come here," Vaynar intoned, his voice resonant like a struck bell, "not to learn answers, but to endure questions. This," he held the object high, "is a puzzle forged to reveal the order of your thoughts. Every one of you will receive one. None shall begin until all are ready. Only then may the true trial commence." A faint shimmer rippled across the room as identical boxes materialized before each student. Some leaned forward with reverence, others studied with suspicion. Elias simply reached out, curiosity burning brighter than restraint. The object was cool in his palm, its surfaces rearranging with faint ticks as if responding to his pulse. He turned it over once, then twice. Around him, the others sat stiffly, disciplined in their waiting. The cerati lowered its spines in concentration. The Zealand folded its arms as though willing itself to patience. Vaynar's voice was still weaving instructions through the air when Elias, almost without thinking, pressed two panels together and twisted. There was a soft click, then a flare of pale light. His box opened, its sides unfolding like petals to reveal a hollow interior. The sound cut through the chamber like a breach of oath. All eyes snapped to him. For an instant Elias did not move, caught in the sudden stillness. Then the murmurs began. He disregarded the order, hissed one of the THRNN, its words vibrating in its throat like a hiss of steam. "Humans always break rules," the Zealand growled, half rising from its seat. "No discipline, no respect." Elias blinked, realizing belatedly what he had done. His instinct had carried him ahead of caution, and now the room seethed with resentment. He held up the box in helpless defense. "I didn't mean, I just turned it." It opened. Vaynar's eyes, black and depthless, narrowed. He stepped forward until the glimmering folds of his cloak brushed the edge of Elias's bench. The instructor did not raise his voice. He did not need to. "You acted before the circle was bound. Do you understand what this means?" Elias opened his mouth, but no answer came. The box lay light as bone in his palm, its petals still unfurled, its hollow echoing with a strange hum. It should have been triumph, yet the weight of the room pressed down like accusation. The cerati leaned closer, spines stiff with suspicion. No one opens Vaynar's puzzles so easily. Either he cheats, or he carries knowledge forbidden. A sharp silence followed, broken only by the steady pulse of the chamber's walls. Elias felt heat rise to his face. He wanted to insist it had been luck, that his hands had moved without thought, but something in Vaynar's unblinking stare rooted the words inside him. The instructor regarded him not with anger, but with something stranger, calculation, as though Elias had triggered a sequence none of them were ready to face. At last Vaynar straightened, his cloak whispering against the dais. "What is done cannot be undone," he said. "But every action breeds consequence. Remember this. All of you. A puzzle opened too soon may reveal more than intended. His gaze lingered on Elias, unreadable. The box in his hands gave a faint tremor, and a shimmer of light flickered in its hollow, as though something unseen had stirred awake. Elias swallowed hard. The test had not yet begun, but already he sensed he had placed himself, and perhaps everyone in the hall, on the edge of a different kind of trial. And in that silence, waiting for whatever would follow, he realized with sinking certainty that every eye in the room had marked him as both threat and key. The light spilling from the open box lingered, pale and restless, like a breath that refused to fade. It pulsed against the ceiling and walls, casting every alien profile into stark relief. No one moved at first, but the air bristled with suspicion. Elias clenched the object tighter, as if by holding it he could contain what he had awakened, though the faint hum vibrating in its hollow suggested otherwise. The Zelan was the first to rise fully, its claws flexing with audible clicks. "You have doomed us all," it said, voice like stone grinding against stone. "Vaynar warned of consequences, and now your impatience has loosed them." Elias's throat tightened. "I didn't know." "Of course you didn't," the Cerati snapped, spines rattling like 1,000 needles. "Humans never know. They act, and others suffer." Its many-faceted eyes glowed faintly, reflecting the pale shimmer from the box, as though magnifying the accusation. Vaynar raised a single hand, and the chamber stilled, though not in peace. His presence imposed order like gravity itself. "Be silent. The boy's error is irreversible, but it offers a truth more valuable than obedience." He stepped closer, and with each pace the glow seemed to bend toward him, reluctant to obey. This box was not merely a puzzle. It was a vessel, and now it is unsealed. At his words, the light shifted, breaking into thin, wavering filaments that floated free like strands of smoke. They hovered above the students, then drifted with searching intent, brushing against minds as though tasting their substance. The HFY twins stiffened as the filaments traced the glowing vessels beneath their skin. One shivered, muttering in its liquid tongue. The Cerati hissed when a strand grazed its spines, and the Zelan swatted at the air in vain, anger mounting. Elias alone felt the filaments linger. One dipped into the hollow of the box, then returned to coil around his wrist, its light threading into his skin. Instead of burning, it tingled with an almost familiar warmth. The sensation startled him, and more than that, it unsettled the others. "See," the Zelan growled, its broad chest rumbling. "It clings to him. He is bound to what he unleashed." Vaynar did not refute the claim. He merely observed, his expression carved in calm severity. "What you witness is no accident. The vessel responds to impulse, not calculation. That is why it yielded to the human hand." Murmurs rippled through the benches, a tide of unease. Elias wanted to drop the box, to cast it back onto the dais, but his fingers refused. The object was light as glass, yet it held him as surely as if shackles had closed around his wrists. The instructor's voice carried over the whispers. "Your task has changed. You are no longer merely solvers of puzzles. You must now contain what has been released. These fragments are shards of a greater mind, one fractured and dangerous. They test not how you think alone, but how you join together." A bitter laugh escaped the Cerati. "Join with him? Impossible. His recklessness is poison." But another voice answered, softer, uncertain. It belonged to one of the HFY twins, its luminescent veins flickering like candlelight. "And yet he did what none of us could. He opened it. Perhaps that means something." The chamber fell into uneasy quiet again. Elias could feel the heat of their glares, the weight of their judgments. He wanted to explain, but what could he say? That it had been instinct? That his fingers had found a pattern no conscious thought could name? It sounded like foolishness, even to himself. Still, the coil of light around his wrist pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat, as though affirming a hidden accord. Vaynar surveyed them, his tone implacable. "Blame will not shield you. Fear will not contain this. Either you face it together, or it will unmake you." He gestured toward the drifting strands now weaving more urgently, forming vague structures that threatened coherence. Each of you must contribute what your kind is strongest at. Only then will the vessel close again. The Zealand bared its teeth, reluctant but not foolish. The Cerathi's spines trembled, broadcasting fury, yet even it seemed to recognize the peril. Reluctance settled into the benches like a heavy fog, while Elias sat at the center of it, the focus of resentment and necessity both. He whispered almost to himself, "I didn't mean to start this." But no one comforted him. The Cerathi spat softly, the Zealand glared, and even the sympathetic Thryn avoided his eyes. The box in his hand vibrated with a deeper hum, as if the shards beyond were answering to him alone. Vaynar inclined his head ever so slightly, as though confirming a private suspicion. Then prove it was not meaningless. Prove that your impulse can be shaped into more than chaos. His gaze swept across the room. And the rest of you, prove that your pride does not blind you to necessity. The drifting strands above began to congeal, their light folding into sharper angles, forming something like a face without features. The air grew colder. Elias felt the coil on his wrist tighten, pulling gently toward the forming shape, as though inviting him closer. He swallowed hard, aware that every creature in the room now watched not the puzzle, not the instructor, but him. The conflict had begun, and it was no longer simply about a box. It was about whether one human's instinct could be trusted, whether disparate rivals could set aside their grievances long enough to survive. And though Elias longed to sink into the background, the humming warmth around his wrist whispered a truth he could not ignore. Whatever happened next, he was no longer a spectator. The unfinished shape above them shivered, then released a sound like fractured glass. Every student flinched. The trial was already moving forward, and they had not yet chosen if they stood together or against each other. The shards congealed into a shape that no eye wanted to fully comprehend, a figure both present and insubstantial, its angles shifting faster than thought could follow. It loomed above the dais, faceless yet intent, and the temperature of the hall dropped until breath steamed in the air. The students recoiled, every instinct warning them that what hovered there was not meant to be free. Elias alone remained rooted, the coil of light around his wrist tugging insistently, pulling him toward the incomplete form as though it recognized him as its point of origin. The Zealand growled low, its bulk tense with the urge to fight. "We cannot contain this. Smash it now, before it grows stronger." "You cannot strike what you cannot touch," the Cerathi countered sharply, its spines trembling with agitation. "Every lash of your claws will only provoke it. The instructor demands balance, not destruction." The Thryn twins leaned toward one another, veins flickering as they whispered in harmonized tones. Their voices wove into a single thread. It mirrors thought. It hungers for discord. The more we argue, the more it strengthens. Elias tightened his grip on the box. Its hollow still hummed, calling the light shards back, but the fragments resisted, circling restlessly overhead. He raised his voice, steadier than he felt. "It reacts to me. Maybe if I lead, it'll follow." The Cerathi hissed. "And why should we trust you? You unleashed it." "Because it chose him," one Thryn murmured, reluctant yet firm. "And because we have no choice." The instructor had not moved, watching with the stillness of a judge. His silence weighed heavier than words, and Elias realized Vaynar would not intervene. The resolution belonged to them. He drew a breath, then stepped forward onto the dais. The light at his wrist pulsed stronger with each stride. The fragments stirred, turning toward him, their half-formed face collapsing into swirling strands. Fear scraped along his nerves, but beneath it, something else sparked, an intuition he couldn't explain, the same instinct that had made his fingers twist the box before thought could stop them. "Don't resist it," he said, though his voice faltered. "Focus on what you're best at. Let it see who you are. Maybe that's the key." The Zealand muttered darkly, but extended its claws, channeling its immense control into steady precision rather than violence. The Cerati spread its spines wide, projecting a disciplined current of thought outward. The HFY twins linked hands, veins blazing in synchronized rhythm. Together their efforts created a lattice of intent in the air, though the shards continued to writhe. Elias lifted the box. Its edges flared, resonating with their collective effort, but the vessel lacked cohesion. The strands swirled dangerously, pressing against the walls until cracks formed in the metallic ribs of the chamber. He felt the pull intensify, urging him to do more than channel. He had to direct. Closing his eyes, Elias let the sensation guide him. He thought not of steps or patterns but of momentum, of how one movement flowed into the next. His hands shifted, turning the box with instinctive precision. Panels slid, corners folded inward, and the vessel responded with a low harmonic hum that steadied the chaos above. The fragments slowed, their angles smoothing, their hostility dimming into coherence. Yet they did not return willingly. The lattice the others formed began to waver under the strain, and Elias heard the Cerati gasp, its concentration faltering. Panic clawed at the edges of the room. If he failed now, the fragments would shatter free entirely, too wild to bind again. "I can't hold it," the Cerati cried, spines trembling violently. "Yes, you can," Elias answered without hesitation. His own fear sharpened into command. "You're not alone. Keep your focus. I'll bring it back." His words startled even himself, but they carried conviction, and the Cerati obeyed, drawing on reserves it had nearly abandoned. The lattice steadied, and Elias twisted the box one last time. The fragments surged, spiraling downward in a rush of light, folding back into the vessel's hollow with a resonant snap. The petals closed, sealing the glow within. The chamber fell silent, only the sound of ragged breathing filling the void. Elias sagged, clutching the box, its surface now smooth and dormant. Around him, the others straightened slowly, disbelief etched across alien features. The Zeland's claws retracted, the THRYNN twins dimmed their veins, and the Cerati's spines quivered with exhaustion. None spoke at first. Vaynar finally descended from his place, his cloak trailing like nightfall. He regarded Elias with eyes that gave nothing away. "The vessel is whole again. The fragments are contained." His gaze shifted to encompass all of them. "And what have you learned?" The Zeland grunted. "That the human is reckless." "And yet," one THRYNN replied softly, "without him, we would have been consumed." The Cerati exhaled a slow hiss, less hostile than before. "He led when he had no right to lead. And still we followed." Vaynar's lips curved in the faintest semblance of approval. "Then the lesson is clear. The puzzle was never about the box. It was about disruption. When order shatters, when certainty is denied, will you cling to grievance or shape chaos into unity?" He let the words settle before fixing Elias with his unwavering stare. "You, human, embody that disruption. Instinct can be folly, yet it can also reveal paths reason overlooks. Today, it revealed survival." Elias wanted to speak, but no words rose. The weight of what had happened pressed too heavily, and the box in his hands still felt alive, as though its silence was only temporary. Vaynar turned away, his voice final. "The trial is complete. But remember, what was awakened remembers you. The vessel will seek you again." A chill traveled down Elias's spine, yet beneath it, a flicker of something else lingered. Not fear, but the uneasy recognition that the box had not chosen him by chance. As the other students filed out, some with narrowed eyes, others with reluctant respect, he remained seated on the dais, staring at the sealed puzzle. The hum within had quieted, but not vanished. And as he traced its surface with his thumb, Elias knew the test was far from over. The box had closed, but its mystery had only deepened, and whatever waited inside was not finished with him.